Welcome everyone to another Woltemade Center lecture. Today will be the last Woltemade Center lecture for the semester. I want to welcome also all the students and other people that is watching via web stream. And I'm going to present Professor Joan Manter to do the introduction of Rich Baker. Welcome, Rich, to Ohio Wesleyan University.
Good afternoon. I'm Joan Manter. I teach marketing at Ohio Wesleyan. I'm really happy you're here. I'm excited about the topic, and I'm very pleased that Rich Baker's here with us today. Public relations got my attention outside the classroom, so I always want to make sure that students and everybody else really understands the importance of public relations. In some cases, there was almost a bit of a confrontation between public relations and marketing, thinking that they're very different, but I know how well they work together. Working with companies who need to have positive relationships with not only customers, employees, vendors, donors, and influencers, and especially the media. And the biggest way I can explain to you how important public relations is, and maybe I've said this to my students, is I was in Louisiana and a CEO said to me, "I want two people with offices on either side of my office. Yes, I want finance, but I want public relations there too." This is critically important. So that's why I'm pleased to give you a little background on Rich Baker. Rich Baker has worked in marketing communications and public relations for more than 35 years. He currently serves as Director of Communications for the Ohio Public Employee Retirement System, the 11th largest public retirement system in the country. Rich and his staff handle all facets of public relations, from member relations to social media and from crisis management to market research. Prior to joining this organization, Rich served as Director of Communication and Investor Relations for two pioneering technology companies in Central Ohio, CompuServe, the world's first commercial online information service. I don't know if you all knew that was in Columbus, Ohio. And Meditech, a digital storage, supply chain management, and electronic publishing company. He attended and graduated from Ohio University, majoring in journalism. And for the past 26 years, Rich hosts a weekend evening acoustic radio program on WOSU called the Bluegrass Rumble. He's very diversified. He served for 12 years on the WOSU Public Media Board of Directors and selected in 2012 as Communicator of the Year by the Central Ohio chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. So it's with great pleasure that I introduce to you Rich Baker. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joan. I appreciate that very much. Good to see everybody here today, and thanks for joining us to learn a little bit about public relations today. I'm going to talk about the changing face of public relations, and we'll talk about the profession as it used to be, the profession as it is today, and we'll do a quick case study at the end, and then we'll open it up for questions and have an exchange. And if there's questions you have during the presentation, please feel free to interrupt, put your hand up. If there's something we need to clarify, would be happy to do that. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's see a show of hands on the number of people who have made your reservations on Carnival Cruise Line. How many of you are going on a cruise on Carnival Cruise Line? I'll see we have one person who's doing that. Anybody else? See, out of about 50, we have one. Okay. So one person on Carnival Cruise Lines. Okay, let's see. Well, how many of you have like younger brothers and sisters at home? Okay. Oh yeah, just lots of you do. And you'd probably like them to have, like your younger brothers or sisters, to have a role model that they can look up to and learn from. How many of you would like to have, let's say, Lindsay Lohan as a role model for your younger brothers and sisters? Nope, not seeing any hands there. Let's try another one. How about, let's say, Charlie Sheen? Would you like him to be your younger brother or sister's role model? No, I'm not seeing. Joan, I'm not seeing a lot of participation here of these examples. What is the issue here, really? When you think about Carnival Cruise Lines, you think about Lindsay Lohan, you think about Charlie Sheen. What comes to mind in terms of either these institutions or these people? Anybody? What comes to mind? Yes, sir. Negative headlines. Absolutely. Anybody else? When you think of negative headlines and you think about, let's say, a company or a person, and they're getting a lot of negative headlines, what do you say about that situation? These people have bad what? They have bad reputation. They have bad publicity. They have bad public relations, don't they? That's what we say. Man, they've got bad PR. What's going on here? And you know, the list goes on. Have you heard about Fisker? You heard about the automobile manufacturer by the name of Fisker? Fisker builds hybrids, but their hybrids are high-performance hybrid cars. They have the equivalent of 450 horsepower. And the Fisker company was started by a guy named Fisker. That's him in the picture there. And he has, I've seen these cars in person, and they are magnificent machines. The only problem is, after he got started, the company that makes the batteries that power the car went out of business. And Mr. Fisker got a $200 million loan from the United States government as part of the economic stimulus program to start the company. And then when the battery manufacturers went out of business, he went to China and he had a loan set up. And then at the 11th hour, the Chinese said they were not going to provide the money. So here's this guy, he's got this auto company, and he can't get batteries. He owes the government $200 million. And you know what the last thing he did was and his board of directors fired him just a couple of weeks ago. You know what his last action was? He bought one of his own cars and drove it away. So anyway, bad PR for the Fisker folks. Have you read about Lululemon and their see-through pants? Would you like to discover that someday at the gym? Lululemon has had a lot. They've had a very strange history. They claim that their pants are made out of seaweed, and that it's just like one weird situation after another. Do you think they have good public relations right now? No, absolutely not. Just another example of companies that are in trouble. Now, how about the Catholic Church? Now, they've had some great news here recently. They have a new pope, of course. The Catholic religion does. But what's going on with the Catholic religion? What is their public relations challenge? Actually, they have more than one. But which ones come to mind? Sex scandals, absolutely. They're still dealing with that. They're looking to Pope Francis for some leadership in that area. What else is going on as you think about the Catholic Church? Particularly as you think about the Pope, the new Pope, and what he may or may not represent. Anything come to mind? Well, oftentimes you read in the press where there's a disconnect between the members of the Catholic religion and the leadership in Rome. That you know, a lot of people were saying, gee, maybe we should have had a younger pope and that sort of thing. But that is a public relations image issue that the Catholic Church is trying to deal with. So really, public relations, you know, is really a part of almost everything that companies do or that individuals do, particularly like in Hollywood and in just in the public spotlight. Public relations is a big part of what everybody is interested in. So let me ask you, what do you think public relations is? Just throw out a definition. What do you think public relations is from what you've read and understand in class and so forth? Yes? Maintaining a relationship between the company and the public, did you say? Yes. Okay, that's pretty good. Anybody else want to elaborate on that just a little bit? Yes. It's what people think about when they hear your name or your brand. Those are really excellent definitions. The Public Relations Society of America has come up with definitions that are very close to the ones that you just offered. The professional maintenance of a favorable public image, just as you just said, by an organization or a famous person. And I don't know if you've studied, have you heard the names Ivy Lee and Edward Bernays? Have you talked about them in class at all? They are often credited as being two of the fathers of public relations. Their definition of public relations is that it's a management function which tabulates public attitudes, defines the policies, procedures, and interests of an organization, followed by executing a program of action to earn public understanding and acceptance. A little bit more of elaborate definition there, but the key points in that definition are a management function. You know, as Joan was saying in her opening comments, public relations and marketing departments and so forth oftentimes are right now outside the CEO's office. They're a part of executive management. Tabulates public attitudes. Now that's the scientific part of public relations. It used, in the early days, there wasn't nearly as much science to public relations as there is today. But right now, it truly is a behavioral science. It utilizes technology and data to formulate strategies and earn the acceptance of the public or of the customers that they're aiming for. We'll talk about Ivy Lee and Edward Bernays in just a minute. And then the Public Relations Society a few years later came back around and reformulated their definition to say that public relations is a strategic communication process that builds mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and their publics. That is a way of saying that public relations is really about earning the understanding of the public or of the audiences that you are attempting to communicate with. It's not about some of the misconceptions that sometimes you associate. What are some of the misconceptions that you think are part of public relations? When somebody says PR to you, what terminology comes to mind that may not be highly flattering, let's say? Yes. Yes, paparazzi. Okay. There's another P word there too that's very close to paparazzi. Yes. And there's a third P word. Propaganda, sometimes. Any other words like that? What else comes to mind? You always hear when something is kind of heading in the wrong direction, and sometimes you'll hear the news commentators say, well, they're just putting a blank on the situation. Spin, exactly. Those are some of the words that you hear. You guys did really well. Here's some of the words that are sometimes associated with public relations as it used to be. Manipulation, spin, also getting press, or you used to hear the term getting some ink, which is basically just getting newspaper story coverage. Press releases. Used to be that public relations was all about press releases. If you could write a press release, you indeed were a public relations person. That has changed. We'll talk about that. Propaganda, as you've already mentioned. How about lobbying? Have you ever heard associated with public relations? Lobbying is not necessarily a bad thing, but in the context of what you often hear in the press about the attempt to influence people's decisions and their thought patterns, particularly as it relates to elected officials, sometimes lobbying has developed an unfortunate connotation. So that's what public relations sometimes used to be viewed as. But what about public relations today? What do you believe has changed about public relations? Anybody? Social media is a big part of the way companies and individuals communicate. Who is it, Lady Gaga, that has more Twitter followers or whatever it is than anybody else, or Facebook? You know, that I heard that 1 out of every 11 people on the face of the earth is now on Facebook, I believe. And I do want to ask you about Facebook, by the way, because Facebook is supposedly on the way out. I want to see if you guys, as millennials, agree with all that a little bit later on. Don't let me forget to do that. What else about public relations do you think characterizes the profession as it exists today? Yes? They're working on transitioning of getting the profession back to the public?
Yeah, so instead of like marketing out, people are trying to like incorporate the public.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, absolutely. The comment was that public relations now is an integral part of a marketing plan to get the public as part of what it is you happen to be marketing, whether it's a product or a service or a person or a company or an entity of some sort. Very good. That's exactly right. What else? What about public relations today? Social media, integration of the public more so than it has been in the past, getting public acceptance and that sort of thing. What else? Those are very good answers. Yes? How quickly people can become informed about changes. Yeah, exactly. And that, again, is where social media plays a big role. But you're right. And why is that the case? Why do you think the speed at which we understand and learn and get information, why is that so much more important now than it used to be? Anybody? You can't fool the public as much anymore. Public is smarter. And why are they smarter? Exactly. Because they have access to the same information that that a lot of others used to have access to exclusively. I mean, that goes to the point of sunshine laws and the transparency that a lot of companies are committed to these days that perhaps they may not have been committed to in the past. Those are great answers. And you're absolutely right. Getting access to information quickly is becoming more and more important, particularly as we live in what's sometimes called a soundbite society. You know, years ago when USA Today became a national newspaper, you know, many people would tell you that that newspaper gave birth to the soundbite, to the short abbreviated columns, and then social media. I mean, 140 characters. Come on, you know, I have to know everything you want to tell me in 140 characters. That is sort of the soundbite approach to instant information. Tell me what I need, tell it to me now, and give it to me very concisely. And that's why when I talk to students, this is just a little sidebar, but do I have some journalism majors in here as well? Any journalism majors? Mostly, okay, there's a few. Marketing, mostly marketing. I don't know about majors, but you're in marketing. The skill set that is integral to good marketing and to good journalism is a very transferable skill set, and it's based on good writing. I used to say, you know how you always heard one picture is worth 1,000 words. I used to say one good word is worth 1,000 pictures, because if you can express yourself in writing, you can do just about anything you want to do in the field of communications, whether it's marketing, public relations, advertising, news, whatever it might be. And that really hasn't changed. Good writing and good written communication continues to be the core of everything that is essential to good communications. And it's a skill set that you can take with you no matter what you end up doing, no matter what your major is, no matter what your profession is. So I think what we've said is that public relations today, it is indeed a science. It has become highly sophisticated. It's basically technology driven, and it's focused largely on good communication skills. It is all about the management of the flow of information, as many of you have said, between your organization or a person that you represent or yourself and the publics and audiences that you're trying to reach. It is indeed audience focused. It's all about the audience. It's about earning audience respect, earning audience understanding, and integrating them into whatever it is that you happen to be either selling or promoting or educating about. Public relations today is indeed strategically based, so it's all about a strategy. It's not about shotgunning news releases anymore. It's all about strategy. It is technologically driven. It is much more automated. Social media has totally changed the face of public relations. Public relations it's not so much about promotion as it used to be, but it's about education. It's about earning the understanding of the publics that you're trying to reach. And it's also about social engineering. That means it addresses the demographics of the audiences that you're trying to reach. It takes into account society as a whole, and public relations is really tailored to what is going on around us. And most importantly, public relations is measurable. Now, in advertising, it's pretty easy to measure your results, isn't it? Because if you purchase and place advertising, you get a response to that advertising. That's a very measurable thing. Well, in public relations, it's harder to do that, but measurability is still very important. You have to defend and define and justify the expense of public relations to your CEO or to the entity that you work for or whoever it might be. And that measurability has become more and more important, and thank heavens for social media, because social media has built in a capability for measuring audience response. So that has really defined public relations as it is today. But if you walk out of here today and you don't remember anything that I said, I won't take it personally, first of all. But secondly, there are two things I would like for you to make sure that you remember. When somebody asks you, what is public relations, I'm going to give you two really simple answers. Public relations is about issues management. It's about managing the issues that influence or affect a person, a company, a product, an event, a situation. It's about managing that issue. And that there's not a negative connotation to that. Management through education, management through information, management through informing, management by engaging your audience in what it is that you have to communicate to them, and so forth. So public relations is about issues management, and secondly, public relations is about reputation management. Just ask Lindsay Lohan, or ask Tiger Woods, or ask Jerry Sandusky, or ask a number of people who are in the news about the importance of reputation management. Or ask an organization, ask Mr. Fisker about how his cars are doing and what people think about the cars that he's making and all the issues that he has. Ask Carnival Cruise Line. When you come back, I'd like to have a report on your experience at Carnival Cruise Line. That would be great. But it's all about reputation management, and these organizations and these people are having issues with their reputations. Now, on the good side, when I mentioned the name Apple Computer, what do you think about Apple Computer? Do they have good reputation management? Do they have bad reputation management? Of course it's good. Of course it's good. They've become synonymous with quality technology. Steve Jobs was the symbol of the organization for so long, and that's real positive. That's a great example of positive reputation management. We're not going to look at old bones for too long here, but I do want to give you a little bit of history about public relations. And I think I asked before, you haven't heard of Ivy Lee? Anybody ever heard of Poison Ivy Lee? He worked for Standard Oil Company, the old Standard Oil Company, way back that over generations is now BP, British Petroleum. And Ivy Lee is oftentimes called one of the fathers of public relations because he developed, at least he's given credit with developing the press release. And I think you all know what a press release is, I would imagine. Okay. And then along comes Edward Bernays, and Edward Bernays, I believe, is really the true father of public relations because he introduced really the whole area of social and behavioral science to the practice of public relations. He was a theorist. In fact, he was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he used Freudian theory that people needed. He used the word needed. I might say deserved to be persuaded through education. He really truly believed that it's education that is the engine behind public relations as it developed into current day society. So What do you think the difference is between advertising and public relations? Take a guess. The difference between advertising and public relations. Yes? Okay, advertising is more tangible. Public relations is a little bit more about how you might improve. Okay, right? And maybe one is more measurable than the other is another way of saying, I think, what you're saying. Other differences between advertising and public relations? Yes? That's really a good definition, or good point to make. Advertising is a part of public relations. I like that better than public relations is a part of advertising, so I appreciate that. Advertising is indeed works harmoniously with public relations. You're absolutely right, and it works harmoniously with the whole marketing mix, which I'm sure is what you're studying now. So they do work hand in hand. You're absolutely right. In fact, good advertising generally has good public relations behind it. And in many ways, good public relations is supported by good advertising. When you think about, again, if you think about watching the Super Bowl and you think about, Budweiser beer, or you think about Apple Computer, or you think about some of the other products that were advertised on the Super Bowl, it wasn't necessarily exclusively the advertising that allowed you to form your opinion of those companies. It was also the public relations. It's what you read in the newspaper. It's what you saw online and social media. It's what a Facebook friend said, whatever it might be. So that's a very good point. Anything else? Differences between advertising and public relations, or similarities between advertising and public relations? Yes. Very good point. Public relations is a little deeper than advertising, perhaps, because public relations drills down, I think I heard you say, gets a little bit more to the heart of the matter. There's more education, more information, whereas in advertising, by definition, it typically is a 15-second, 30-second, 60-second, or if it's online on YouTube or something, it might be a video commercial of sorts. And maybe hits the highlights. Maybe there's more entertainment value, I think I heard you say, in advertising than there might be in public relations. All of those things I think are true. They absolutely are, which points out really the strengths of the different disciplines within marketing, isn't it? Because, to take your point a step further, if you think about, if your audience needs to be informed, educated, persuaded, and you need to earn their business, let's say, public relations probably play a little bit larger role. If you're after name recognition and there's an entertainment value to what it is you're marketing, then advertising becomes an important part of that marketing mix. Those are all really very good. My professor at Ohio University used to say, the difference between advertising and public relations is with advertising you pay for space, and with public relations you pray for space. And that, of course, harkens back to the old days when you would try to get the main engine for your public relations was getting something in the newspaper or in a magazine that was printed and that other people could read. So times have changed, indeed. What are some of the specialties within public relations? And let me just in case that's a kind of a nebulous question, let me give you a hint. When you think about, let's think about an organization for just a minute and how they might utilize public relations, particularly from the standpoint of their audiences. What kinds of specialties now do you think might take shape as a result of an audience-driven public relations strategy? Anybody take a wild guess? Okay, I'll give you one hint. One of the specialties is news media relations, right? I mean, Joan mentioned that in her opening comments. A lot of what a public relations department does or a public relations agency is that they indeed work with the news media. And they work with the news media to educate them and earn their understanding of what your product or your service is, and then hopefully with the outcome of being that they will write about you, or they will do a television story about you, or there will be something posted on a on a news website about you, and that sort of thing. Okay? So if you think news media relations is one aspect of public relations, what else as a specialty comes to mind? Who are the other audiences that you need to reach? Yes? Social media is clearly a channel that reaches audiences, absolutely. What others? So social media as a component of a public relations program is exactly right. That's exactly right. That is a specialty now. What else? What? I was just getting ready to say, thank you. Took the words out of my mouth. When things go bad, then something called crisis communication kicks in, and that is there are a lot of agencies that make a living on crisis communications management, and they are there when bad things happen to good companies or bad things happen to good people. That's generally crisis communication. And what do you think the characteristics of crisis communication might be? Just name one or two. What would be, when you think about crisis communications, what comes to mind? We've actually already touched on it just a little bit ago. Immediate information, right? You want to get out there quickly with what your story is. And it's all about reputation management. It's about restoring, your rightful reputation when things don't go your way. Okay? Pretty good. Internal communications. Your most important audience in public relations is your own employees. They are, if you're working for a company, they are your ambassador for your message. There's nothing more powerful than to have your employees at your organization tell your story as an organization. Any of you ever heard of Guy Kawasaki? He has been credited as being the first high technology evangelist. He worked for Apple Computer. His whole job was around promoting that organization, Apple Computer. He was called an evangelist, and then the term evangelist took off. We had an evangelist at CompuServe after a while. And his first audience was his own employees at Apple Computer. Once he taught them about the company and the things that would be of benefit to say about the company, they became his biggest ambassadors. So internal communications is one of the specialties within public relations. Customer relations, if you happen to be selling something, a company that sells something, you certainly want to maintain good customer relations. You want to make sure that your customers are happy, that they're informed, they're knowledgeable, they know when you have the latest enhancement to your product, let's say. And there are specialties within the field of customer and customer relations within the field of public relations. Member or stakeholder relations, this is really more in the public sector. Companies have customers. In the public sector, if you're an agency, let's say, you typically will have members or what are oftentimes called stakeholders. These are people who have a vested interest in the services that you provide. So that's a specialty within the field. Investor and financial relations. I was investor relations manager for CompuServe and Meditech, and what I did in that regard was I communicated regularly with the financial community, the Wall Street community, also to our own shareholders, our own stockholders, and anybody else who would be interested in our financial position as an organization. And we did the annual report and so forth and so on. Paid attention to SEC regulations and things of that nature. So that's a specialty. We already mentioned news media relations. Also, government relations is a specialty. In other words, communicating with elected officials, the people who pass laws, that might affect your business or the product or service that you provide. And then we also mentioned crisis communications as well. Okay, real quickly, tools of the trade. What do you think comprise, what kind of tools do you use when you practice public relations? We've already mentioned some of them. Don't say social media. You have to say something else. Yes. Writing. And that could take the form of news releases, like official letter communications, absolutely. What else do you guys, every company has what? The university has, on the internet, it has a website, of course. Website's got to have content. So that's part of the tools of the trade, websites, any of the social media products, and I want to ask you about that in a minute. What else are the other tools of the trade? Yes. Absolutely. Speaking engagements, very, very powerful tool in your public relations satchel, if you will. Having public speakers and along with that, special events. Maybe it's a seminar, maybe it's a trade show, maybe it's I go to Columbus has the Taste of Columbus, where they have a bunch of restaurants that make really good food, and I go and I eat all the good food. That's a way to promote Columbus restaurants. That's an event. It's a special occasion of sorts. Again, in the interest of time, we'll fill this in. Special events we already talked about, speaking opportunities, news releases, news advisories. The difference between a news release and a news advisory. Anybody want to take a shot at that? News releases, of course, are written. It's always written. It's disseminated either not so much in paper anymore. It's mainly email or posted on websites or sent through Facebook or whatever. What do you think a news advisory would be? It's a shorter version of the news release, and it generally, oftentimes, it's utilized to make the news media aware or an audience aware of a special event, like a press conference. Heard of press conferences? News conferences. Okay, video and audio releases. YouTube, thank God for YouTube. I mean, YouTube has become a Shangri-La of good audio presentations and video presentations that have for both entertainment and for business use. Newsletters, when we talked about writing a minute ago, newsletters, pamphlets, brochures, all those sorts of things still have a role, although for the most part those things are not being in print anymore, they're more electronic. And of course newsletters, and those really should be e-letters. Most newsletters now I think are done as electronic mail. And press kits and press information, not a whole lot of that anymore. Most companies put their press kits online, and the news media just goes to the website and finds the information that they need. We talked about social media, and there's the obvious ones: website, YouTube, blog, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Instagram are becoming very, very important tools in the field of public relations right now. Particularly, as I mentioned earlier, do you all agree that Facebook is on the way out? Declining in use, yes.
I would say it's definitely changing.
Mm-hmm.
It's becoming more professional, more business pages, or there are more business pages. Definitely have to be more careful about what you post because employers are looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely think it's changing. I don't know if it's on the way out, but I think as far as just solely college students and high school students, that's
Yeah.
definitely evolving.
So the opinion there is that Facebook is changing. It's becoming more professional, and that it may not necessarily be on the way out, but the way in which it is used continues to evolve. I just read where one of the surveys I just read recently said that millennials, these are people born 1981 and later, believe that Facebook is now a chore. It has become a chore. It's become a thing that they have to do instead of something that they want to do. Do you agree? Disagree? I see a couple of no's. Not yet, huh? Okay. Everybody still use Facebook? Everybody has a Facebook page, right? Okay. Just interested in what you thought about that. How about Pinterest? How many Pinterest users do we have? Instagram? Anybody using Instagram? Okay, a lot of Instagram users. Okay. What do you like about Instagram? Simple? Because it's basically a picture, right? Yeah. So it's like the visual version of Twitter. Okay. Anything else? Okay. I figured that's probably what it would be. I mean, again, it goes back to what I was saying about the soundbite society, that we're interested in getting information quickly, succinctly and kind of on our own terms. Let's real quickly do a case study, and I'm going to leave some time for questions. Pick one. Justin Bieber, how are you going to convince people that he's not a nutcase? Carnival Cruise Lines, how do you regain market share? American Electric Car Association, I just made that up, but I'm sure there probably is one. But what's the main problem with electric cars? Do any of you own an electric car? Why don't you own an electric car other than you can't afford one? What is the number one fear of people have when they consider buying an electric car? Yes? Not enough places to charge. That's absolutely a key factor. There's another one that's just as important as that one, and what would that be? Yes? Battery life? Absolutely, battery life. Everybody feels like they're going to get stranded someplace because from what we've been told in the news media, electric cars are still not where they need to be in terms of long-range travel. And that is compounded by the fact there aren't too many places where you can charge them. I ran across my first charging station that I can remember seeing, and it was on Kinnear Road, right outside Ohio State, as you might guess. You know, they would naturally be on the leading edge of those sorts of things, I guess. And there was a whole bunch of, there were 3 or 4 cars sitting there with plugs plugged into them, charging them up. So I guess it's coming. But you're absolutely right. If you were the public relations director for the American Electric Car Association, that would no doubt be your number one mission, is to educate people as to why you shouldn't be afraid of being stranded in the middle of nowhere when your batteries go dead in your car. Tiger Woods come back. How does he regain his image? Now, he's already on his way back, isn't he? He's number one golfer again in the world. So I guess he's coming back. But others would say he's still got a long way to go because of why? He has a reputation problem, doesn't he? And not to mention he lost all of his sponsors. So anything here that you'd like to tackle real quickly? We're going to do the world's fastest public relations plan. What's that? Tiger Woods? Terrific. Okay. What's your first step? What first step? Okay, you're Tiger Woods' public relations agent. What is the first thing that you need to do? What is the first thing you need to do as a public relations person, no matter if you're Tiger Woods' PR agent or if you are the head of a public relations department at a corporation? What's the first thing you need to do? Educate the public. Okay, what do you do before? What are you going to educate them about? About what really happened. And what, so therefore you need to formulate what? There you go. You need to have a goal, don't you? You need to agree on your goal or your desired outcome, a goal statement. Was that what you were, I'm sorry, that may be what you were going to say. What's the second thing you need to do? Okay, you got your goal statement, you know what you want to achieve with Tiger Woods. And I assume that's going to be to regain his reputation, right? Okay? If you assume that that's it, then what's your next step? What's one of the most important things in public relations? When you decide to communicate, what comes to mind? Who you want to communicate to, right? Who's your audience? Who are you going to talk to? You want to just blast all this stuff out there? Or do you want to channel your efforts in a particular direction? So who do you think Tiger Woods' audience would be? Yes. His fans, his sports enthusiasts, probably. And who might be a secondary goal? His sponsors, absolutely, absolutely. Nicely done, that's exactly right. So you determine your strategy. So now it's, how are you going to do that? Okay, what's the strategy going to be? Okay? What do you think, just name one strategy that we might employ here. Let's say for Tiger to get his fan base back. Yes. Have him make a public announcement about everything that went wrong. So that's one of the most popular things in public relations is the apology, right? Okay. So have him apologize. That would be one strategy, right? Okay, anybody else? Quick strategy? Yes. And then, oh, that's great. Tell about how he plans now to correct the ills of, of everything he's done and to get back on track. And he's already done that to one degree, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. You need a budget, right? You need to know how much you're going to spend. Okay? What else do you need to know? Okay, so we've said we know what our goal is. We want to have his reputation restored. We want to get to his fans and potential sponsors, and we have a couple of strategies in mind, starting with apology or maybe a little plan about how he plans to get back, and we have a budget. What else? Excuse me? A time frame. Absolutely. Tactics and a time frame. That's perfect. And then what is the last thing? And I mentioned this earlier on in my talk. What is the last thing when it's all said and done? Let's say you've done this public relations program for 2 years, okay, and you've executed the strategy, you've spent the budget, all your tactics are working, and it's all within your timeline. Now what do you do? Yeah. You measure it, exactly, absolutely. You see how you did. How did you do? Did we achieve our goals, and so forth? And I'm so glad you picked Tiger Woods because I had this visual. Winning takes care of everything, he said. Do you agree? You're his public relations person. What do you tell him when you see that on the news? Brian Williams just showed this screen on the NBC Nightly News, and he had a little interview with Tiger Woods, and he said, winning takes care of everything. And you're his public relations person. What do you say? No. You say no. Why not? Anybody? Is that a good statement or a bad statement? Because it doesn't take care of everything. Okay. Do you think that helped him or did that hinder him? Hinder? You think it helped? You think it hindered? Yeah, okay. Does everybody pretty much agree that, is that a good statement or a bad statement? Bad statement. Okay. Okay. But he's the #1 golfer again. Isn't it working for him? And his ex-wife is dating a billionaire. That's right. Okay. That's all I have, guys. I appreciate it very much. This has been wonderful. You guys are going to be, those of you who decide to go into public relations, the field is in good hands. I can see that right now. And I have time for questions. Anybody who would like to ask some questions? Yes, sir.
Just want to ask a follow-up question related to Tiger Woods.
Okay.
What happens as a public relations officer if at the core he doesn't change?
At the core of himself?
Yes. Is that an issue as for you taking him on as a client?
That's
and
a great.
Can you fix that situation? In other words.
So if he doesn't really practice what he preaches, is it an issue for you as a public relations practitioner and for him as a client?
And for your strategy.
And for the strategy. I have an answer to that, but does anyone else have a thought about that question? It's really a good question because it gets to the heart of the public relations profession. Anybody have a thought about that? Well, the thought that immediately comes to mind for me is it's an ethical question, isn't it? And public relations practitioners abide by a code of ethics. And the ethical conduct of your company, your product, your client, whatever it might be, every practitioner in public relations has to ask themselves that question. Am I compromising ethics in this particular case or in this particular account? If you don't believe that Tiger Woods really intends to mend his ways, let's say, then you have a real heavy question to ask yourself. Is that something I want to be involved in or not? That's the answer. Good question. Yeah, anybody else? Other questions? Okay, yes. Yes.
What about a situation where you have an organization? Oh, I did that What about an organization who's very private and they don't see the value of public relations? Can you give some examples beyond some of the tools you've mentioned on what companies can do to really understand the value and how they can measure the results and fund further activities?
Right. For a company that may not understand or appreciate the value of public relations, what do you do to convince them that it is indeed a discipline worth funding and worth having as part of their marketing mix? The proof is in the pudding. Generally, when there is a crisis, you don't have to educate your company about the value of public relations, because crisis communications is really one of the main avenues that they have for restoring their reputation. But if times are good, how do you utilize public relations? And I would have to say, you have to demonstrate its use, and you demonstrate the benefit, and then you have to assign a value to it. Very much like advertising assigns a dollar value to advertising exposure, you need to do the same thing in public relations. You assign a dollar value to public relations exposure. In the print media world, and even in television broadcasting, it's become fairly accurate now that you're able to assign a value to public relations exposure. In other words, what is the value of this front page story in the New York Times? What is the monetary value of that? And the way that's generally computed is, if you had to buy that space, what would that have cost you? And then you look at the circulation of the New York Times and you say, golly, that's worth $43,000, and I reached, I'm going to make up a number, 1.2 million people. So you assign a hard value to that. Now, in the world of social media, it's getting easier and easier. You know how many likes you get? It's right there. You can see it. So you can assign value already to that. And there are also companies that are kind of in their infancy who are assigning monetary values now to social media exposure. So to answer your question, you have to do it. You document it. You document the public relations exposure and the benefits. Surveys are also another good way of starting. You do a survey at the beginning where you have a benchmark, and you ask people what they think about your product or your service or your company or whatever it is. And then at the end, when you're measuring, you have another survey. And with any luck, those numbers went up. And that's another tool that you can use to show your management the value of public relations. Is that helpful? Okay. Anything else?
I do have one more question.
Sure.
A lot of people in this room are writing marketing. A lot of people in this room are writing marketing plans for new products. And a lot of them have said, we will just tell the media. They'll be all excited about our new product. And so we can write releases, we can call reporters, whatever. We can do a lot on social media. How do you really form that relationship? How do you get the interest? Is this a realistic approach for new products or product line extensions?
By using the news media?
Yes, like what or just any way to get any of the constituencies interested. What are those for a new product?
Oh, okay. Even beyond news media. So how do you get your constituencies, your target audiences, interested in your new product? A lot of that hasn't changed either, but some of it has. Relationships are still at the core of getting your product or your service or your person the attention that he, she, or it deserves. So it's relationships with news media. It still boils down to trust, and that trust is something that you earn and develop over time. Now, the new dynamic there is social media, because you may have heard the term citizen journalism. You could make the argument that all of you in this room, in one way or another, are really a journalist, because you have the tools that you never used to have to publish your opinion, to write your review, to ask the questions that you want to ask, or to engage in a dialogue, an electronic dialogue with one person or hundreds of people. And that is going around the news media in a lot of ways. Now, the news media is tapped into all that. I mean, they're one of the biggest users of Twitter, obviously. but it still takes the relationship to develop. But now you have more tools than ever before that aren't news media dependent. And I think what separates, you know, a good public relations person from, you know, perhaps from one that isn't quite as successful is that they know how to balance that. The news media still has an incredibly important role to play in shaping public attitude and in publicizing products in a way through testimony through news articles and so forth. It's just that the relationships are a little bit different, and you reach them in a little bit different way. And I can't even remember a time when you send out a news release and everybody falls all over themselves and runs the news release word for word. It just doesn't happen. You have to really earn the news media's respect and attention and earn their understanding. And social media has become a tremendous tool to help that happen. Yep. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. It was a pleasure.